can't access the OBS controls currently, so I am adding a little bit more volume. I will check the microphone whenever it's accessible. Usually it takes a while. Okay. I see the controls and just doing a few quick tweaks. I put the music lower. Microphone seems to be already pretty close to the maximum. Okay, let's try this. Does it increase the volume of my microphone? It looks like I'm already peaking almost. Okay, that's better. And then I'm just gonna drag down the music a little bit more. There we go. Okay. I did manage to get the music to duck now, so it should go lower a little bit when I speak. Okay, now it seems that the volume is working. Sorry. I was so confident that I got the ducking working, but it didn't occur to me that maybe it also affects the microphone volume at the same time. So today I will be using broad strokes brush. This is right after coarse canvas in my oils for Procreate set that you can get on Gumroad. And in this live stream I will be using this as the main brush, and thus far in all of these live streams I've been using only one brush, so probably the entire painting will be done with this same brush. So let's just zoom in and look at the cool features that this brush has. I am most proud of the texture, which is a canvas with a primed base on it. So it's organic, but it's at the same time has a very even canvas texture. But the canvas texture isn't overpowering, as you can just like drag the paint into the grooves of the canvas if you just keep going over the same part enough times, or you can lightly smear by holding the stylus sideways and easing off the pressure, and that way you can get that sort of like nice and smeary look. As you can see, it's blending a lot naturally, like a whole lot. This type of stuff is super fun to just like blend the existing colors, and as you can see, like here the brush has dragged the existing paint multiple times, and it creates that sort of like very thick viscous paint effect. And then when you go into a smaller scale and when you press a little bit more, you can still do high opacity details. But when you start using this brush, like I think it's better to get into that sort of mindset that this is going to be a painting, so you're not going to be drawing with this brush. So if that's not what you want, then I don't recommend this brush. But if you are one of those people like me who just likes to kind of mix colors on canvas and see where the painting goes, then this is perfect for that. And you can very easily like harmonize your colors. For example, this entire palette has been created the way that I am currently using the brush, by just like creating these sort of random pools of color and then color picking different parts of it by using these as light sources. And if you want to steal this palette, I'm gonna open it in this mode because I think it's a little bit easier to screenshot here and get it. I'm gonna switch into my normal headphones, get rid of the keyboard. Which I finally got working. Like now I can shout again with my keyboard, which is really important. I also want to show the hidden layer because I have my reference photos for this scene open on my phone, and I will be using those pictures more there. But I just wanted to show you, since so many people are often in these streams asking about my references when and if I need them. Like this is the kind of scene that I need them because specifically I want to do at least one of these Japanese vending machines. So I chose just this from image because it has multiple ones. That doesn't mean that I'm going to do any one of these individual vending machines, but like it's basically there just as an aesthetic guide. I'm going to also have a little bit of a parking lot in the foreground, so I have that parking lot there. I don't know if I will be able to manage to squeeze it into this composition, but I'd really like to have that sort of like street sign that says Tomeru on the ground. You can see here. So this is how you read it. It's basically so that cars stop before they get on the main road. And then a convenience store. I don't think I need it, but I just think that having that reference image to me helps me visualize that I can really go overboard with all of the posters and signs on the door. So I really don't have to worry about like seeing too much what is in there. Whenever I'm nervous in these live streams, I end up like clicking the add layer button. It just looks like I'm doing something, but honestly, it's just a nervous energy painting. So hello to everybody in the stream. How has your painting been going this week? Have you painted anything interesting, or is there an idea that you still haven't gotten started? This would be the perfect moment if you don't have anything important to do, to paint at the same time and get some real progress on your art. gonna try my best to keep the canvas in view mostly, so that I won't go into crazy zooms. Just think it's kind of easier for you guys to see that way what I'm doing. And just in general, if you are avoiding zooming too much, it's sort of easier to paint as well. It's easier to stay on track on like what the whole painting is really about. I think this area could be pretty close to rule of thirds section. It's going to match it with the perspective tiny bit better. C Visor is saying, I finally finished my landscape piece after last week's live stream. That's really cool. I'm gonna put the phone here. Someone is saying, hi, I started drawing again after a lot of time. That's always the scary part, like starting after a long break. At least to me, like that feels really intimidating. I really like the way that the greens turned out in this palette. They are muted, and that makes this green especially good. So I'm gonna start with this kind of desaturated one, because it's always more rewarding and easier to go towards those more saturated colors. But it's super difficult to kind of rein in if your saturation goes all over the place, especially too early. Also, this time I actually had enough time to prepare the stream so that I managed to handpick the entire playlist. So if you don't like this music, you can entirely blame me. Like, there's no luck involved. I really did put all of this together. So this time I will have to take responsibility for the quality of the mix as well. And I mixed it together as well. So I put this all together in Audition, so it's one single sound file that is playing in the background. I'm gonna try this highlight color just to see if it works for the scene. When you're starting painting, I think it's a lot easier to kind of like warm up to the painting mode by doing some kind of like organic masses in your painting. If you start from, I don't know, precisely drawing a cell phone from the late 90s, then just thinking about that gives me like shoulder tension. I'm gonna try the darker color as well to see how that works. I want there to be another block of buildings here, but maybe I want to start them like a little bit behind this building in the foreground, just to give them slightly more visual hierarchy. I don't know what the English word for it, but in Finnish art teaching we call this Arbo Perspective, which is a value perspective. So it's kind of like the old Egyptian carvings in the tombs. So you can see the important things are when important people have been carved into much bigger forms, and all the peasants and servants, they are not as important, so they get way smaller allotted spaces. I'm going to do some kind of a rooftop over here and slowly start building the atmosphere. What would you say is the difference between digital painting and digital drawing? Well, if somebody shows you a drawing that has lines and precision and has been done with tools that don't mix or blend together, or in traditional forms that they don't have any volume, like physical mass in them, like then that's to me always drawing. But when you paint, you tend to move around masses of color, and instead of like doing a single line, you kind of move around paint and let it mix to itself, and use the way that you fill areas, like the way that it's painted, to be part of the expression itself. Like that's something that in drawing you can do with line rhythms, but it's a completely different way of working on illustration. Hope that somehow makes it a little bit more clear. Like here, if it was just a drawing, I could just fill this entire space or use cell shading. But if I'm painting, like the direction of the paint strokes matters. For example, if I do this, you can immediately see that it's describing this form at the same time. I'm grabbing a little bit of the sky color, blending it in, and I keep color picking. It's just like grabbing a bigger version of this same brush and trying to see if those paint stroke directions can just tell the form and shape of this rooftop better. Sorry, I'm so zoomed in. I'll try to get back to the big view. I also needed to make decisions here. Someone in the chat is saying that like they want to start painting and they start painting, but after a while they get stuck. I think it's really important to first of all like acknowledge that this is happening to you, because it's not something unique to you, that you are somehow going through something unique that stops you and only you from painting. Every artist that starts doing anything creative, pretty much, like at some point you will get stuck. And this is because you are not doing the same painting over and over. You are trying and learning new things. And at the point of the painting process where you are starting to do something new that you don't know how to do yet. I haven't done a vending machine in some time, and I haven't done so many that I have them in my visual library. So if I didn't have references for those, this would be a pretty risky and dumb stream to do. So at the point where I would be stuck and it wouldn't look right when it comes to those vending machines, I would have to acknowledge that like I am feeling this resistance from the painting. But that's also a clear sign that I have something to learn here, that this is an opportunity, that if I finish this painting, I will 100% finish it as a better artist than when I started. And I think that's a pretty exciting idea. Here I am color picking the bush in the background, and I'm just lightly lifting up my brush, giving it a lighter touch, and that way, as I am painting, I am mixing it with these colors on the ground, almost like a reflection. But the difficult point in a painting could be something else than just like a shape that you don't know how to do. For example, if you know how to draw and paint every single element in your scene, but it's still not quite working, then what I do is that like I go through my checklist method, which means like going through all of the rules of composition, color, line rhythm, all of those elements. Like I look at my painting through the checklist method, because like intuitively I can't see what's not working. So one of the elements could be, for example, that do I have my subject color and my magnet colors arranged in a way that makes sense? In this illustration, I think there are going to be bright lights in the convenience store. What is my convenience store here? This one. So I would check if I'm overusing my subject color elsewhere in the painting and modeling the entire impact of that. That would be like one checklist item. Because I am going through this like checklist in a very practical way. I am not like assigning value to how well or badly things are made. Are my colors divided with the 3 bucket rule? Like, am I using mostly one color, some of another color, and then just a pinch of my accent color? If the 3 bucket rule is not working, then I know that, like, as I am going, like, I don't know if this is the reason why the composition is not working, but at least I know now what to fix. And then I just like run over the checklist in my head. I have it memorized so well that I can just like go through it again and again, and I can check my corners if any diagonals are hitting my corners. I can check my shapes, I can check my arcs and angles, all of those things as items on that checklist. By the way, anybody who has done like my art course on Gumroad, like there I go through the entire checklist. So it's a pretty long theory video, but it's there. There is also a composition guide video for the membership of this channel. In fact, just on the membership Discord, I posted this collection of links that has like useful art lectures from the membership, at least ones that like if you're only watching few videos on the membership, like those videos I think are very useful to watch if you are serious about learning art. Like they're not like fun and entertaining, like it's more like stuff that I teach in art classes, so don't expect any explosions in the editing. It's just very fact-heavy stuff. And even those, like, they don't really matter if you don't actually like implement those into your work. But that goes for all art learning, basically. Regarding those that list of videos, I really should do a community post and put it on the community post, because like not everybody is on Discord, and I understand that, so I'm gonna do that. this has to end somewhere, so I'm just gonna guesstimate where this growth thing could end. Yeah, I mixed in ambient sound as well because I can see the music often, so for me that doesn't just help, it's necessary for me to paint at all. I also teach a lot of art for free, like here on YouTube. I have made tons of free videos. If you just look at my channel, like there's pretty much videos on most topics when it comes to painting already. So that's a completely free resource. If you could go back to when you first started painting, what would you tell yourself to always remember? I think I would probably tell myself that it's not easy being yourself when you're painting, but it's a skill that you can learn. But every time that you do it, you will always need to be brave and to feel proud of that, like bravery. I think when I started painting, I didn't realize like just how brave it is to like do anything creative and show that to other people. I just thought that I'm bad and I'm trying to learn a skill. I didn't understand at the time that like just the act of like subjecting myself to the practice of learning art and showing my art, like even at that state to others, that already was and probably will always be like the bravest thing that I will ever do in my life. If I had known like just how much courage I was exercising. I think it would have been like easier for me to feel proud of my work and enjoy my work when the work itself like obviously wasn't rewarding in the same way that I felt like my technical skills didn't match up at all to the stuff that I see in my head. And every painting pretty much like felt like a failure to live up to that vision that I had in my head. But the sheer fact that I did it anyway, and I showed those paintings to others, I didn't realize how brave I was. Yeah, that's the one thing that I wish I had known. Because for all the crappy paintings that I did, there are thousands of people who have those like creative ideas and they see all these worlds in their head, but they do nothing about it. And it would have been so easy to be one of those people. Would have taken literally no effort whatsoever. I'm terrified to show people, even my husband, so I get that. I never think that mine are good, but my husband is amazed. He sounds like a good husband. Also, if any of your friends start a creative practice of any kind, if they start learning to sing or like learning to play the piano or guitar, you don't have to like their work, but you can still be supportive. Like your reviews are not necessary, so you can keep those to yourself, but you can at least acknowledge this, acknowledge that like they are putting themselves into a very vulnerable state and showing an incredible amount of trust in you. That's like a huge sign of trust that they are showing their work to you. So the very, very least that you can do is acknowledge that and support them for being so brave. That is like the side of the marquee, then this part needs to be thicker. And this part thin out a little bit. Also, when you start practicing art, I think it's very easy if your resources are free resources on YouTube. I think it's very easy to fall into this trap that you see professional artists doing videos because they are the only ones that have any chance of like climbing high enough in the algorithm to be like shown to you when you search for videos. So I think there's a huge risk in thinking that like to practice art, that's the kind of art you need to be making, which is not at all the case. There are really good videos on YouTube that are free about fundamentals of art. For example, box rotations. Like I did a video on box rotations, but like there are many people who have done videos on box rotations. It's a very fundamental skill that you can start practicing, like even when you're not doing a full illustration. If you're just having a lunch break, you can doodle those on your small sketch pad. Then you can vary it with like different line practice sessions, like try drawing the same line on paper over and over and try to match the previous lines. Or do a bunch of dots on paper. And then try to draw as straight of a line from one dot to the next as possible. That's also a good exercise to do. Also, I see that there are plenty of members in the chat, so all of the members, like, go look at the sketch club sessions. There are plenty of like art fundamental practices in those, and in those I am doing the actual exercises in real time. So those are good videos to open and then just like do the exercises at the same time. They're also like divided so that you can do just few of the exercises and then return to the video later. I think this maybe could be like one side of one vending machine, and then I could have some in front of the store as well. Like about here. I erased the top as well because I don't want it to be a harsh line. I'm trying to see if these perspective lines actually meet at the horizon line so that they are correct, because these are not in the same perspective as the other elements in the scene. And as they are meeting like approximately at the perspective line, I'm gonna let it be there. With perspective, I think it obviously matters on what kind of art you do. But personally, I don't feel like perspective has to be like 100% right in every single situation. As long as you have like lines that are correct enough so that the illusion is solved through the illustration, then I think that's fine. But if you start using Drawing Assist and 3D modeling software for every single line to make sure that it's 100% correct, I think you run the risk of like your art becoming a little bit like lacking in personality, because all of those lines that you would have otherwise hand drawn there yourself, they just don't get done at all. Oh, that's huge. Instead of using a vanishing point in the sky, here I am just using direct vertical lines And that's on purpose. I don't want the scale of this place to seem huge. I want it to feel like it's human scale, like we are watching this scene. All of these reflections are probably going to be the very last thing that gets added, but since they are going to be such an important part of the composition, I really do need them already to just block in where they are going in the first place. I just need these to be fully vertical lines. It's just enough of an idea for me to understand where they are going. They're going to be an important part in holding up the attention in this area that is literally going to have nothing else than the reflections in there. Hello, Akarre92. Sorry for the late answer. I finally can work some further on the isometric onsen bath house. Just a little by little it comes together. Yes, I'm looking forward to doing the next stream on that as well. For the next one, I thought we could do some isometric illustration tricks, and I think I could go over those before like diving deep into the prop design and then just like doing as much of that as possible. I want there to be some houses here in the distance that are not so strictly limited to this, like the layout of the perspective grid. By the way, if you are doing the isometric illustration in the Sketch Club projects live streams, at this point it could be a good idea to think about the props and maybe look for references for the props that you want to be including into your scene, just to make it more fun for you to work on. Oops, I accidentally merged those on the same layer. Hey Mikko, I love your paintings. I am colorblind, red-green. Most of my art is grayscale or basic primary colors. Painting outside these limits seems overwhelming. Any tips or pointers to start? I think it's also a really good base that you have if you have been doing a lot of value paintings with black and white. No matter if you're colorblind or not, I think everybody should do that at some point. It's a really great way to also learn and enhance your compositions. I know it's not the same thing, but for me, like I have pretty much impossible time to do straight lines. So whenever you acknowledge these sort of like weaknesses in your way to paint that you really can't change at all. Like I cannot make my hand any more stable than it is. You can either make it part of your style, or just avoid situations where you need the kind of skills that are not physically possible to you. So there are plenty of like third-party applications also for colorblind people who do art that can identify color zones for them. You can use pre-made palettes also and label them. So for example, these palettes, how do I get into the card view again? Here. If I go into the card mode, here you can see that all of the colors are automatically labeled. So for example, this is a desaturated red, and this is a desaturated green. They might be like pretty close to value, but if I go to here, I didn't write these texts by the way, so it's automatically done. But there are also like applications that can do this on PC if you're not using Procreate. I had one colorblind student that did amazing drawings, and then he just like put like very bright one single color paint bucket fills to the backgrounds, and he was complaining to me that like I just don't know how to take this any further from this point because I'm colorblind and I can't paint this. And like these were like amazing pieces of artwork, and I was just like, what else do you need to do for these? Like they are already like looking art. So I think it's also important to kind of acknowledge that like your art doesn't have to look like everyone else's art. And for some reasons, it can't. So, like, are you gonna make art anyway? Like, then maybe thinking about, like, just not trying to have your art look like someone else's art, because, like, you have a unique opportunity to create your own style, but, like, acknowledging your own limitations in that one area as well. There are so many like different skills to creating art, where color is just like one tiny bit. I'm gonna do some kind of a grid and put that on the window. For this I'm gonna use snapping, because that way I can see those. Interval lines. So when you do 2 lines, you can have even spacing by just using them as a reference for the next copy. One of these areas is going to be thicker, so I am offsetting it a little bit. This will thicken the lines there. And then I'm selecting inverse after doing this part and clearing out all of that, and then inverting this back. Now I should have something that I can use as shop doors. Just gonna make sure that the bottom is even before I transform this. And before I transform, I am going to also do a duplication first. Get the snapping off. Make sure that it's vertically aligned by referring to the corner of the canvas. And then just using the tracks to get it in place. No. I lost that selection. Damn it. I'm trying to stylize a way to kind of like show that there are tons of details, but this is all going to be hidden by all of those like marketing tapes and stuff that I showed in the reference earlier. So if anybody is jumping in now, like these are the reference pictures. So you can see that there are plenty of all of these kind of like signage so that you can barely see inside the store at all. Obviously, like these are just reference, I'm not doing that store or those signs, but they are just like helping me guide myself through this difficult part. I'm also trying to create visual noise that would be kind of believable enough to be inside the store. All of this is going to be Gaussian blurred as well. It's somewhat starting to look like a store. I can imagine that when I start putting all of those tapings over it, then it's gonna all come together, hopefully. So I'm using this kind of visual noise garbage as a way to erase some of these lamps. So I'm selecting that lamp layer, making sure that the alpha lock is not on, and then I am using the visual noise as a selection. So I'm gonna select all of that, and here I'm just gonna erase some of the lamps. To give that sense of overlap. Now that grid that is in front of that window with the door, I'm gonna select that entire thing, duplicate it once, and then just tap it into place. To see what I'm doing, I'm first inverting this layer, because if it's the same color, I can hardly even see it. So now I have this selected, so I'm just tapping on the right side of this entire bounding box. Tap, 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 tap. And this way I am going to create that depth that you can see, that the beams aren't just 2D. Now I'm gonna... In fact, that's a pretty good color to start with, so I'm just gonna duplicate that once more and then invert those colors so you can see that those are the same ones. I'm gonna set this as a clipping mask, then add a mask to this, and now if I paint on this mask with black, I can carve out some of that light back in. Thinking that it's coming from the ceiling, so it's hitting these parts. Here there might be some of those like cluttering elements in front of the lights, so it's not going all the way through. I'm using the natural texture of the brush, so I'm letting that paint really look to also describe the direction of the light here. That's a little bit different than just filling with flat color. I hate that they added this feature to iPads. I really hate the new update. I also just like cannot stand the glass interface. Like especially if I look at these sliders over here, and I can see that the painting is kind of being distorted by that glass effect. Like whenever I'm doing that and I see like at the corner of my eye some kind of movement that I don't feel like I am creating, it's always throwing me off, and I just think that it's so against what the original UI designer that used to work for Apple did, that like all of the features were like very easy to separate and clean, and had this like skeuomorphic look to them, which make them easy to identify as buttons. Like now the background of this brush selections, like those look like buttons now. Like who is that helping really? It's just a terrible user interface update. Hey Mikko, have you tried Art Studio Pro? It's very similar to Procreate. Is that on iPad or is that a PC application? If it's on Mac, I don't have a Mac computer. That does sound like vaguely familiar, the name of that application, so it might be that I have tried. Just in case like you're wondering like what application to use for art, like or what program on PC, pick one. Pick the cheapest one. They are literally all the same. I see like no point in doing like app reviews at all on this channel, because like that makes people feel like it's somehow an important choice. It's not. And don't fool yourself into thinking that the most expensive ones are somehow better. Like Photoshop, for example, is not a painting program. So just pick one. It really doesn't matter which one you choose and start painting. Like, don't let the I don't know what painting application to choose to be a reason for you to delay the moment when you start actually like painting. Okay, now I did that. What was the point of that? That was not a rhetorical question. I'm seriously asking and questioning what I'm doing. Okay, I guess that makes somewhat of sense. I think if I tilt that ledge a little bit. But there should also be a lamp here on the outside to kind of light up the area in front of the store. And do a few of those. I think that's a troublesome location for one of those, so I'm gonna turn it gray so it looks like there's a lamp there, but it has expired. There's some kind of a sign up here, just to break apart that one lamp in front of that other element. I'm looking at my reference vending machines right now, and it seems like these window parts go quite close to the edge on the front of the vending machine. And at least one of these has the window in two parts, so I'm probably gonna do that. I think these sort of like elements that have lots of like cluttered detail, these sort of scenes are a great way to practice just like simplifying elements. How can you get that same sort of like visual impression without doing all of that same detail? Because you have to cut corners somewhere, otherwise people will be just looking at the various items and packet designs of these vending machine items here. So any kind of like scene that has tons of like small detail, like a very complicated looking side of a car or a stall on the street, some kind of a military boat, all of those are great subjects for practicing that kind of detail, just like impression of details. Doesn't mean that like you're doing less detail, it's just like how closely are you going to follow what you see and how much are you going to fit it to the painting that you have in front of you. Just because you do all of the detail that you have in front of you doesn't mean that it's going to work or make the painting better. And as always, zooming out helps. Zoom out a lot and zoom out often. A lot of you probably already know this, but I love this song. I will probably never get tired of that track. There's an artist I follow loosely who uses Microsoft Paint and uses it masterfully. Yes, that's pretty legendary. Wilderness Mama 444 is saying, Hi Mikko, this is my first stream of yours that I have managed to catch. I have a question about gradient maps. Is there a way to apply gradient map to the whole piece, but layers are still separate? Yes, but why would you want to use gradient maps is another matter. But if you absolutely must, then you can do a copy canvas first, like go to the wrench icon and do a copy canvas and apply to the gradient map on that layer. Then you duplicate that layer way too many times, and then you bring it on top of each one of your layers and set it as a clipping mask and then pinch it down on that layer. Are there any tools you wish were in Procreate by now? I just wish stability, that's all. I wish that there was a gray user interface on top of the light and dark modes. That's it. That's pretty much end of my wish list. This is not a feature that is in pretty much any brush engine except for Painter back in the day, but I wish that there was a way for me to input a collection of sources instead of like just one, so that I could, for example, create a randomization effect for the source of the brush, so that, for example, I could use a traditional media brush to create a set of sources for brushes, and every time that you start a brush stroke, it would like randomly pick one from that list, so that it wouldn't always be the same. I'm all for like more painterly, more organic looking brushes, so that's pretty much what I would probably end up using if that was added someday. But the way it already is, like, I cannot stress this enough. I really, like, more than anything, I hope that Procreate doesn't keep adding features, because that way you very easily get into this sort of like very cluttered user interface that has like tons of effects and brushes and buttons that just are not necessary. I think as an art teacher, like the biggest like hurdle that I always need to get my students like over, like especially like very beginners, they always think that they need to know what all of those like tools do. And the fact is that like once you teach them how to change a brush size, how to choose a color, change opacity, and how layers work, you have taught them like literally how to use the application for painting. You haven't taught them how to paint yet, because that's the part that you want them to pay attention to and start learning. But learning the basics of Procreate is really like learning how to hold a pencil. That's it. It's not some kind of like weeks-long journey that you are learning all these complex tools. It's just few key features, and there already is quite a few things that you will probably never need. Like for example, if we go into adjustments, when are you ever going to need bloom effect? Never. And never have I ever pressed that button to do anything important. You can just skip that entirely. I can see a version of this world where they start adding photo editing tools, just like Photoshop has. But I think editing applications and painting applications are two separate things, and I don't need all of those things to be in one thing. It will just make the entire thing less stable, harder to run, and especially on machines that are older. Because of AI, RAM is getting like insanely expensive, and that raises the prices of like all electronic equipment, like an iPad. So I think current iPads are like just fine to use for painting. I hope that the way that Procreate runs doesn't end up needing like more and more power to force people into upgrading into new iPads for that reason. If you think iPad prices are high now, I think we are about to get like insane price hikes in the next few generations. You can turn off the transparency in the settings. Thank God. I'm going to do that. Thank you. Somebody's saying vector process. Procreate is not a vector illustration program. That's it. Like, there are those, like, they need tons and tons of tools. Like, just open the user interface of Illustrator. Would you like to have all of those buttons in Procreate just so that you can do vector illustrations? I don't. Like, I don't want them in my application even so that you can do vector illustrations here. I would rather Savage Interactive, like, just create a vector illustration application separately for that. Silvinka is saying, I started with Sketchbook 2 on tablet and Procreate still does. Then I switched to Infinite Painter, which is a Procreate dupe for Android, but it crashes a lot. So I bought an iPad and got Procreate. I think Procreate's best feature, in my opinion, is the minimalism, but it's also Apple Pencil, because the input lag is you don't even notice it. And when you come from painting on the PC, on Photoshop, or any other method, I used to paint with Cintiq all the time in Photoshop, and the just first line that I drew on an old iPad in a store, I was just like, I didn't realize that I was dealing with this much input lag until I didn't have it. So that immediately made me throw away 20 years of experience in Photoshop to immediately and permanently switch to iPad. I'm cleaning up some of the layers because there are some layers that I just don't need for working anymore. I'm just sometimes tapping on the screen because then I'm using the source of this brush to create more texture. It's a different type of texture than you get by painting and scumbling. Silvika is saying, same. I was already debating whether to buy an iPad before I bought one. I entered a giveaway and won a huge brush bag, so then I had to buy one. That sounds fun. Wilderness Mama, which is a great name by the way, is asking, what is your preferred method to start coloring a black and white piece? Eesh. I would probably, if I had to start coloring a black and white piece, I would probably try to use the existing forms to separate them into their own layers, and then it would be easier to start adding clipping masks and start basically painting them from scratch, because you can't really use the values as an underpainting if you want to create vibrant colors later. You can use tints to tint those values, but you're not gonna get that same vibrancy. So at some point, even if you start with tints, I would recommend not going like overboard with saturation. For example, if you add overlay blend mode to a black and white base, it will like end up with like very saturated bases. So if you tint the bases that way, I would also probably darken them so that I could use normal blend mode to add light and have more control over the process. Garnets is saying, I do think Procreate has that philosophy of minimalism to a fault, because some features are so hidden that you basically have to know them to know that they are there. I have to agree. Like, for example, like when you lose a selection, like this is something that I didn't know, that once you go and try to do something else, you can get the same selection back by long pressing the S button. Which is an absolute lifesaver, but if you don't know it, you are just basically screwed. Lots of small little notes. Let's just add like one more here as well. Colors of these are going to be tricky. Just mixing the colors on canvas is often like a really easy way to get approximately into the same color space of the rest of your items, even if you're dealing with a very colorful element. Is it too early to do a copy canvas? 2 hours and 24 minutes. Maybe it's not too early, maybe it's the perfect point. I think the mood is slowly coming into the painting. Emphasis on slowly. It's a pretty ambitious subject. I think I could also do more with this silhouette. Just group my brushstrokes so that it kind of like shows that droopy heavy rain. I am going to have some rain effects on there, but they're going to be a very minor part in the entire composition. Because if you look outside when it's raining, even with your naked eye, even without a video camera, it's pretty hard to see the rain in the air unless it's really pouring down. So you see the effects of rain in everything else, like the lack of contrast in distant elements or wet puddles on the ground and they are rippling. Like that's an easy tell that it's currently raining. All of the indoor spaces feeling a little bit more humid. If there are large windows, they will show that humid air. If there's a great temperature difference. just finished a sticker during the stream. I was here the whole time. That's fun. I love stickers. Following you for 6 years. I think that's almost the same time that I've been on YouTube now. Is it? Let's do quick droplets of water with noise texture. So I'm just gonna fill this one layer with a dark color. Let's go into noise, add noise. I'm gonna need it to be a lot bigger than that. Not noisy. I think clouds, maybe, yeah. This is not an exact science, so I'm just eyeballing it. I need it to be quite high contrast because it's going to be a bit blurred later, but I do want those fades, so I'm keeping that in. Just so that I can see what I'm doing, I'm gonna turn this into a screen layer for a moment. Do a quick motion blur. Actually, before I do the motion blur, I'm gonna do curves first. Instead of leaving this white, I'm just going to use this as a layer mask. So I'm going to put it back into normal blend mode. I'm going to leave one layer just in case as a duplicate. So I'm going to copy this. And paste it on the layer mask. You do have to deselect the layer itself to be able to paste on the layer mask. Now I have this empty layer, and on this empty layer I'm only going to paint light areas where the light would be leaking through and making some of these rain droplets visible. This is a bit harsh effect, so I'm gonna go into the mask and do one more curve adjustment. Rain is fun because you can take rain is like hair or clouds or foliage. You can take lots of like artistic license with it and just have fun. I recommend you do it. Especially like long, like wide, expansive landscapes. It's so fun to kind of like make those distant shapes just disappear. Maybe the door should have a lower half point as well, otherwise the glass part is just scraping the pavement. That doesn't sound safe. scaling this down and doing a small top banner here. I think it's always fun to kind of design this kind of like fake branding to stuff in your art. Just to me, it kind of feels more like a real world. After stuff like this is in place. Also, when you do this for like big brands in your world, it's so much easier to come up with new details afterwards. I'm trying to think of the area where people who are like running to the store would like most likely break the traffic laws. And I think it's like this one section near the back on the left side where the road gets more narrow. So having this sort of railing there to me makes most sense to keep the customers safe. Sorry, I have so much to paint. I'm gonna check the chat in a second. I'm just gonna find the right color for this. And I think for this type of contrast yellow, maybe an overlay could be a good place to start. And just take down the saturation quite a bit. And then duplicate it and add it as a normal blend mode as well. Then I'm gonna use the same thing as a reflection ingredient. Just dragging it all the way. My god, I have so many layers here. I really like the fact that it's kind of overlapping this corner right here. It's giving that sense of depth. For these, I can also duplicate them, tap them in perspective here, and then just quickly add them a clipping mask. Also give these a little bit of chunkiness. This is really not important to paint, but if you absolutely must, you can. Like whenever you have these sort of monotonous lines, I just think that it doesn't hurt to vary them a little bit. Since I still have this, I could just take the logo of the place and turn it into its own poster. No. quite contrasty, so I'm alpha locking it, duplicating it, and then adding a Gaussian blur to just take away some of that contrast. And this way, when I reduce the opacity, it's just the same thing but in a lower contrast. I'm wearing Jawbone induction headphones, and your ambient noises have me keep checking over my shoulder. Sorry. I should have added like a ton of like text message sounds and notifications and different types of calls. Windows meeting, Slack sound effects, and just to make it most stressful stream for everybody involved. Since we're at hour 3, I think now I can do a few light effects before we call it quits for today. So, copy canvas. I'd probably lose my mind. Yeah. Okay, so notification stream is probably not in immediate production based on that feedback, but let's keep it in mind just as a creative idea. Who knows? Maybe one day I decide that, okay, this YouTube thing is definitely not working out, then what the hell, I might as well have fun with it. I think with this beam I could imply that it's actually light at the end of this. But currently not functional. There's that one step area that is still bothering me. I think it needs a starker shadow to kind of make those highlights pop. Okay. And that's the rainy day stream. I had no idea that this would take so long. Oh, it was a lot of painting. Thank you to everybody for joining the stream. It's been great painting with you once more, and I'm really happy with the amount of stuff that just got done. There are probably like tons of elements that don't have proper reflections that I need to fix later, and maybe like add ambient occlusions to the vending machines, and maybe some more details to the background architecture. Not sure. I kind of like the rainy look that comes from the details just disappearing into the rain. I hope that you got some of your own art done during this stream. I'm looking forward to editing my next video. It's already in progress, and I can't wait to share that with you. It's not that different from this, like when it comes to principles, but it's more aimed towards like all skill levels. Like you don't have to have any kind of like drawing or painting skills when it comes to shapes. I think it's a very clever way to get started with these sort of like shop exteriors, if that's what you're into. Okay, thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next stream. Bye.